In an earlier post, I talked about mounting with rubber cement. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to use the vacuum mount machine in the print center and mount using it. It's another alternative and a much better, more secure alternative. So we start here in the print center with the dry mount tissue. Dry mount tissue is a heat-activated paper that has adhesive on both sides that melts when it gets hot and sticks the print to the substrate or the board that you're mounting it on. So the first step is cutting a piece of dry mount tissue the correct size. Okay, I have cut a piece of the dry mount tissue slightly larger than the work that I'm going to mount. Now I'm going to move over to the actual dry mount machine. Alright, this is the dry mount machine, or vacuum mount machine, and the controls for this machine are right down here. The first thing you want to do is turn it on, obviously. The power switch is right here. It's a toggle switch, so turn it on. The little red LED lights will come on and indicate that it's warming up. It'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes if it's cold for it to warm up to the right temperature. We try to keep the temperature at 190 degrees so that it mounts properly. And the control for the on-off switch is, it's harder to see. It's right here on the timer, the start-stop. So if you can see that, to start it, you push the up arrow, and then the machine starts. All right. In addition to the dry mount machine, you also need to use the tacking iron. The tacking iron is a small iron that is used to attach the dry mount tissue to the work that you're mounting, and then ultimately tack in position the work to the board that you're mounting it on. So this is the tacking iron. It has a circular knob from low to high, 1 through 6, and it needs to go about in the middle, around number 3. If you go too hot with it, it will burn or scorch your work or ruin the whole process. So you don't want it too hot. Also, like the machine, you need to, if it's cold, you need to let it warm up a few minutes, probably only about 5 or 10 minutes on it. So when it turns on, it actually has a little metal plate that it sets on to keep from burning the top of the cabinet where it sits. You're also going to need a scrap piece of release paper. The release paper looks exactly like the dry mount tissue, and you need to know which one is which, obviously. You do not want to use the release paper over the top of your element while you're tacking it and have it stick because it's the wrong thing. It's the actual adhesive paper that you've got. The difference is the release paper is shiny. The dry mount tissue is a dull color. They both are the same sort of off-white color, so they can be easily confused. Alright, so now we're ready to start the process. The first step is to actually tack the tissue to the work that you're going to mount. And so I'm going to line this piece that's oversized up to 2 corners, so ultimately I don't have to trim all 4 corners, I can only trim 2. Take the tacking iron and tack on the corners. This is a debatable issue. Some people tack in the middle, other people tack on the corners. I think it's safer to tack on the corners. So about 5 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. And then peel away. Notice that I put the release paper on top so that the tissue does not stick to the tacking iron. That's very, very important. We have to have that on there. So 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Okay? Do the same thing down here on the bottom. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. final corner. Okay, so now I have the dry mount tissue tacked in position to the work that I'm going to mount. So now I'm going to trim this off back over at the paper cutter. We're back over at the cutter, and I'm going to trim off the tissue that we just tacked on. I'm going to use the rotary cutter that's over here, and I'm going to slide the work under and line it up and simply trim it off. This particular rotary cutter only works in one direction. There's a little sign right here. It says direction of cut, so you have to slide it back and always make your cut going forward. You can line it up easily with the edge of the base cutting edge, and you can see that. Get that straight. Now, this is very important, and it never happens. I want to make a real point to emphasize this. Don't just go off and leave all your scraps like whoever was here before me just did. Take this scrap as soon as you cut it, because you might have great intentions of actually throwing it away later, but you get in a hurry and you just leave it there, and it builds up for weeks. Put it in the recycle bin or in the trash. Back over at the tacking iron now. I'm going to tack the work that we just trimmed out and have the tissue on the back, and we're going to tack that to the board in position. At this point, you really need to use a T-square ruler or something to mark off guidelines or guide points for the corners so that you get this perfectly square and centered and in position. I'm not going to do that for demonstration purposes right now, but I'm just going to actually tack it on here and try to eyeball it. But I would warn you that craft is important in all of your presentations, and you probably should measure it. Alright, again we need the release paper, and again I'm going to tack it to at least 2 corners, if not all 4. When you tack it by the corners, you need to, and this time because of the fact that we've got paper to go through, you tack it about 10 seconds. But when you tack it on the corners, you need to make sure that it's perfectly flat, that it's not bowed up or have a gap in the middle that might capture air and create a bubble when you actually finish the mounting process. So 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010. So we are tacked and in position now. Okay, now we are ready to actually put this in the press. Unlatch the latches on the front. Pick it up by the handle and open the lid. The heating elements for this run in the glass, and it's a double-walled glass, so the elements are up here. The top is warm, but it's not totally hot. You can put your hands on it, you can work on it, etc. On the inside, it's hot. It's 190 degrees plus or whatever, so don't burn yourself when you're working with this. On the inside, it consists of a foam blanket on the top and usually 2 pieces of dry mount tissue. Somebody has left a piece of regular paper in here, so we'll remove that. And the actual vacuum part of this, how this thing works, is the very bottom there is a rubber gasket that is the base of the machine. Alright? There is a vacuum motor and hose attached to the back right-hand corner, and that, when it is activated, the motor turned on, the air is sucked out of the between the glass and the work, and the rubber gasket pushes the work up against the hot glass. The hot glass melts the adhesive and sticks the 2 pieces together. So that's what we're going to try to do. If you're only mounting 1 piece, it's probably a good idea to put this back toward this back right-hand corner where the actual air will be sucked out and the seal will be created. This is a problem. So I'm going to have to redo this to actually finish the demonstration. You can't have any of these components sticking out over this rubber gasket or it will not work. It will not pull down the correct vacuum. So we'll stop videoing right now and I will clean this part up and finish the process. Okay, I've trimmed this up so nothing hangs out over this rubber gasket and we're ready to close it up. So lower the lid, latch the two latches, come back down to the start button which we talked about earlier and start the machine. Okay, you can see the timer start working down. We set it for 3 minutes. It takes about 1.5 minutes to actually mount and about 30 seconds for the vacuum to actually pull out all of the air so that it's in complete vacuum, and then 30 seconds of safe time. So the total of 3 minutes is what we use. As you can hear probably now, you can hear the motor actually working. And if you look at this gauge, that tells you the vacuum. It just now started pulling down and it will go to about 25 pounds of mercury pressure. That's where you want it, and that will ensure a good mount. If it does not do that, it's probably because something is over that vacuum seal. It's not because it's not hot enough or any other reason, it's because it hasn't pulled the vacuum down. So stop everything, make sure that your seal is clean, and put it back in and try it again. And then watch for that 25 pounds of pressure. That's the magic number. Okay, we're coming down to the end of our time cycle, our 3-minute cycle, and at the end of that cycle the machine will automatically turn off. And at that point we can open up the lid and take the work out. It just shut off, so we'll unlatch the latches, lift the lid back up, pull the blanket back, and pull the mounted work out. And here it is, mounted permanently, with no wrinkles, no bubbles, just like what we want.